Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us. This is the Backlook Cinema Podcast. The movies of yesteryear, the movies you loved back in the day. And this is the 57th episode. Thank you for downloading and streaming. We really appreciate it. Now, the reason that I started this show was to strengthen the bond between me, Zoe, and my son, Zachary. We watched movies that I loved when I was growing up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And I'm going to tell you what Zach thought about those classic movies that we just watched a moment ago, or that one classic. We didn't watch a bunch of classic movies. We watched one movie. Gotta strengthen that bond somehow. We strengthen the bond between father and son, one movie at a time. Now, if you like this show, then rate and review us at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and or you can try podchaser.com. You know, that's the new one that had popped up. Or you could do it on your favorite podcast app if they'll allow it. It's so hard. They're all so different nowadays. Now, finally, you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I'll talk about those handles later on, or you can find them in the show notes. And this is a very special episode because once again, we have guests. So I'm starting to gather the guests across the multiverse to help us, I don't know, to liven up the show. You can't just listen to my voice all the time. Gotta bring people on to bring about the cheer and the adulation of the fans. Or, you know, I'm just kind of talking out of my mouth. Let me welcome you, a very special guest. He's a YouTuber, podcaster of the great Real Belief podcast. He's highly intelligent and a stupendously thought. What did I write here? He's I'm messing up the intro.
All good.
He's a stupendously well-spoken person. He's an all-around good guy. Please welcome everybody on your feet for Archie S. Atkinson.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? I think you might have oversold me slightly there, but I appreciate it. I'll do my best to live up to that this episode, but we'll see.
You know, I want everybody to feel good. You know, I'm just trying to let everybody know that I'm not bringing on any slouches on the Backlook Cinema podcast. I'm bringing on the good guys. And I've been listening to Real Beliefs, and I think it is a very well done podcast. And I've been watching some of the videos and on YouTube, and it's easy to find because it's under Archie S. Atkinson, right?
Yeah, it's all just under my name. I used to have like a username I was going by, but I figured I'd drop that and just start going by just my name. It's a little bit easier to find and easier across all socials to just one thing. But I appreciate that. Yeah. Right.
So let me ask you a few questions. I'm not a brilliant interviewer. You know, I'm not like well versed in journalism. I didn't take a journalism class. I didn't even watch any YouTube videos on how to conduct interviews, which now that I talk about it out loud, perhaps I should start. So
it's all good. It just makes it flow a little more natural, if anything.
Right. So if you download this podcast and you wanted to listen to a great interview, then may I suggest a friend, DM Needon. She has the Better Two podcast. Great interviews over there. She's like Barbara Walters. Me, I'm more like Steve Ducey's son, that the stupid son of a bitch of recent tales. So, but we're going to get through this interview some kind of way. So let's do it. Yeah, let's do it. So let me ask you, very obvious question. What drew you to podcasting?
So I sort of listen to them a lot, just on my own free time, or even at work. I work a job I can have music in, and 9 times out of 10 it's just a podcast instead. And I was finding all types of different podcasts regarding things I'd like. So there's a lot of movie podcasts. And I felt like I had something I could add to that space, something unique. And then my co-host is my good friend Xavier. We've known each other since freshman year of high school, so just going on 10 years now, probably right around there, or almost 10 years. And we were bonding over films and stuff. He hasn't seen as many films as I had. We wanted to find like a nice neutral ground to discuss that together. And then we sort of added our podcast is about religion in films, or added the religion aspect as like a unique edge, because I feel like every podcast has to have its unique thing. Like yours is looking back at classic cinema from your childhood. So you got to always kind of find that unique little spin. So that's what we try to do there. Just find a way to talk about film in a fun, unique way.
Yeah, I agree. That is the trick, is to find the angle for your show to hook in listeners, because otherwise you don't want to sound like every other podcast, because then they can just tune into everything. And
yeah,
it's true.
For sure.
You're right. There are a lot of movie podcasts in particular out there. And I remember I was just listening to one movie podcast, and I think they was doing an interview, and they were saying, yeah, we started a podcast because there are not enough movie podcasts out there. Am I right? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. It's a ton of them. But I like the unique angle that yours take, because I haven't seen that in any of the podcasts that I listened to so far. So in your podcast, you view movies from a religious angle. So I wanted to ask, have you always been drawn to religious studies?
Not necessarily. I mean, as a kid in like middle, early high school, I was really into like the Greek mythology and stuff, which is sort of similar wheelhouse, not exactly the same. There was like the Percy Jackson books that were coming out as I was growing up, and those were all what if the Greek myths were true, and it was also kind of happening, and that was always really interesting to me. And then once I got into college, I started taking a few philosophy courses, and a few of those were on would obviously deal with like religion and turning that into a like taking a religious story and getting the moral lesson out of it, and how you can also teach that moral lesson in different ways. And then from there, I sort of started looking into like what really interests me is the truth stories that affected religion, or vice versa. So you have like the idea of the mark of the beast, for example. They said it was like the stamp of the emperor of Rome at the time, who would need his approval to do any transactions. So that's where that idea comes from. And I sort of found all that stuff really fascinating and started digging in from there.
Yeah, I noticed that on one of the episodes I listened to, that you had talked about that.
I think that's an exact example
I think I messaged you about that.
Yeah, that's an exact example I used, I think, on an episode.
Right. So have you read any specific religious books?
I haven't read specific, or sorry, I completely flat. So I've read like the bits and pieces of like the Bible, the Torah, the Quran, stuff like that, but I've never like sat down and fully read them. I've just read bits and pieces or read chunks of them. They're hard to get through if you're not
right.
If it's not like your religious text or you're super into it, it's a little bit tricky. Other than that, not really. It's mostly just there's a really great YouTuber who I wish I could remember his name now, but he does like he's a religious historian. So he does a lot of that, diving into religion from the historical example. And then there's a good documentary on Netflix that I also wish I could remember the name of, but I can't right now. But it's like a 10-part miniseries that sort of dives into the same thing, like the histories and how the religions formed and developed.
Right. Yeah. The reason I asked is because it seemed like I had the impression that you had taken like a religious class, but you took a philosophy course, or maybe read some religious studies books or something like that.
Yeah, a bit of piecemealing from like, a lot of the philosophy courses do sort of cover it tangentially, but they're not fully focused on it. And then a lot of like YouTube or documentaries and stuff like that are in my opinion, the easiest way to do it, to study up on that stuff.
Yeah, those YouTube videos are very good. And as far as my own background, I grew up as a Baptist, and I had a very religious household. Like the whole family was really geared to it. Many of the people in my current generation are kind of like drifting away. I myself am drifting away, but it's like even my brother is like very skeptical of the whole religious angle now. So, but I have been looking at it's like, not confused, but I would examine the books that I'm reading, and is like, always question what was going on. So when I was very young, my great grandmother had like, I guess it's a kid's Bible. It's a gigantic book, and I would read it over and over again, and it had most of the most familiar stories of the Old Testaments and the New Testaments. And so from the very first, like the Genesis story, from the very first story, you run into things that feel like contradictions. So you have the story of creation, and then the creation of Adam and Eve. It's like, okay, I'm cool with that. That all checks out.
Mhm.
It shouldn't, but it did because I'm a kid. And then
Yeah.
it's the story of the first children and the first murder, and then that's when it starts to trip me up. So in the first murder, uh Cain kills Abel. Now at this point, as far as I can tell from what I read, there are two kids on the planet, and one kid just murdered the other kid, so now he's an
Mhm.
only child. And as far as his punishment, the final kid, he's banished. They put a mark on his forehead. God puts a mark on his forehead
Mhm.
so that people would recognize him and not like kill him or beat him up or whatever. It's like,
Mhm.
yes, he's already being punished right now. Don't kill him. Or it's Cain. Don't worry about it. He'll be all right. Now, see, and this is where I tripped up
Mhm.
as a kid. Where are these other people? There are only three people on the planet. You only told me about the
Yeah.
three people. Where are the other people that you're talking about? You're so wrong. As a kid, that
Yeah,
tripped me out.
because they say he goes and to live among other people. It's like, but yeah, what other people? Because the
What other
Garden of
people?
Eden
Right.
is supposed to be the start of everything. I know I read something recently about this, but I can't remember where. But they're an idea that there is another civilization that comes from some other, because there's time between the birth of Cain and Abel and the murder. So the idea is that perhaps there's just a lot that's not told between those two stories, and that if we could find like a missing text or something that could potentially answer that. But yeah, if otherwise you just kind of got to take it in face value and assume like, they messed up and they didn't think about it. But there's probably an answer somewhere. But answers aren't necessarily a lot of this. It's like faith isn't always going to have an answer, and that's something you kind of have to accept if you're going to believe or not believe.
Right. Yeah, but you run into a lot of that, especially like when
Yes,
you're a little kid.
definitely.
And it's like I
Hmm.
never, ask questions or be like, ask a grown up why this was that way or that was it. It's just that I was like, okay, that's just what the book says, and I guess
Yeah.
that's it. I'm going to leave it alone. It's not important enough
Yeah.
for me to try to decipher this mystery. It's
Yeah,
not
like they
it's not a
probably
big
figured
deal.
it out. It's all good.
Right. But see, that's what I'm
Someone
saying. That
else up smart.
those are the things that have shaken my faith. I remember it kind of reminds me of an episode of Firefly. I don't know if you've seen that show.
I have not. No.
In the show, there's like a girl. She's like a young girl, like 12 or
Mhm.
13 or whatever. She's a preteen or a young teen, but she's like highly intelligent. And so there's also a type of priest on the ship. It's a show about a ship, a bunch of misfits on the ship. So
Mhm.
on the ship, there's also a priest, and she's going through the priest's Bible and just basically marking it up with red markers, right? And so, and the priest asks, "Why are you doing this? Why are you marking my Bible up with red markers?" And she says, "I'm fixing it. I'm fixing the Bible. It's full of contradictions. It doesn't make any sense. So I'm fixing it." So yeah, that is I thought I felt her pain, right? And his answer was essentially, you don't fix it.
Yeah.
It's the Bible. You don't fix it, right? But yeah, it's full of contradictions. So moving right along,
Yeah. Same with
you you have
all the ancient myths too. They have contradictions, or there's multiple stories for the same thing. Like, it's one of those things where you just kind of gotta either accept it or accept that that's how it is, and keep moving with it, or that's where you start to find problems and start questioning things for yourself. It's kind of a crossroads you run into.
right. I think most likely is that when you're dealing with a religion, especially the Abrahamic religions, that the leaders don't want to acknowledge that at the time that people started
Mhm.
believing in this, that there were other faiths around, and those faiths were regarded as real. So, like the
Yeah.
Abrahamic faith did have precursors or predecessors, and I think there was like one video or text that I read, or how uh, basically the Abraham God was actually part of another um, He was part of another pantheon of gods, and then basically the believers in that god kind of broke off and separated, so and created their own religion from that. So if you take that into context, then what happens in Genesis sort of makes sense, sort of, kind of.
Yeah, it's the first man of this new generation, I guess.
Right.
Then goes to the old ones eventually. Yeah.
So moving along, you have a YouTube channel. I watched a couple of videos from those, and those are very interesting. Those are more secular, I should say. So
yeah, I don't think I've done anything with religion on any of those.
Right. Found those real interesting. So I saw one where you were talking about how Kylo Ren was a perfect villain for this time for Star Wars.
Yeah.
And that was, what's his, Kylo Ren? That is his name. So that was pretty good essay.
Yeah.
I kind of like that, how you saw how he was drawn to like extremist groups and how he was and the reasons why he would turn in that direction. So that kind of makes sense. Did you like those movies, the last three Star Wars movies where he was featured?
I didn't like most of 9, but I'm okay with 7, and I really like 8, which I know is a not popular. If you read online, I know Last Jedi is sort of the most hated of the trilogy, but for me, that's my favorite of them. 9, I like aspects of it. I just, so much of other stuff I feel like was crammed in there that wasn't necessary, or it was like they just massively course corrected, and I think that hurt that movie more than anything, because I feel like 9, the first half of 9 is just 8 redone, and then the second half of 9 is like its own movie, and it's sort of
right.
Don't love that. But yeah.
The only problem I had,
how are you on those?
I didn't like him as much. Like the first one that I really liked, except I thought it was kind of a copy, which I didn't think was necessary. It was like, oh,
that's my problem with it. It's
right. And I think the reason that it was right, and the reason it was done that way is because if you talk about 4, 5, and 6, the original trilogy, 6 is actually a copy of 1. Well, the goals are the same. Really, there's a Death Star, and they have to go destroy the Death Star. It plays out slightly differently, but it's still kind of like the same overall plot. But I didn't see a problem with it. I think because I was, I don't know, 12 or 13 or 15 when it came out, so it was just fine with me. But now when I look at film more analytically, so when something like this last trilogy come out, it was problematic. The only problem I have with I guess it's The Last Jedi, is that the one where Luke Skywalker tries to kill Kylo Ren? Yeah,
I think that scene is one of the main scenes a lot of hate, and I think there's 3 versions of that scene, and I think what happens is a lot of people only remember the bad one where he is a monster, but they sort of tell it 3 ways. There's the Luke's point of view where he like, oops, Kylo Ren turned evil, I had to stop him. And then there's Kylo's point of view, which is Luke attacked me in my sleep. And then eventually the truth comes out where Luke is like, I had a moment of doubt, it lasted half a second and it was too late. And I understand why a lot of people don't like that, but for me, it makes sense for Luke, because if you take out all the EU stuff that we used to have, because I like a lot of that EU stuff, like the Thrawn trilogy by Timothy Zahn that has like, I can't remember the book titles. It's Heir to the Empire, and I forget the other 2. But I love those trilogies of books and stuff like that. But this version of Luke, it makes sense that if he saw that level of darkness, he has that moment where he's like, I can't let this happen again, because Darth Vader like he took everything from me, and he's a traumatized person. But I also understand people, wanted the more heroic, pure light Luke, or even like the more confident Luke.
I would say that if you cut out everything, because you have to watch the movie imagining that the only movie that matters is the last movie that you saw Luke in, when he was so-called confronted with that evil. So that last movie was when he tried to save his evil father who had killed billions of people. And it's like, even though he knows his father is probably dark and probably won't turn to the good side, that he goes out of his way to save him. So in the movie where he almost kills his nephew because he had kind of a doubted that his nephew was going to be he thought that maybe his nephew would fall into the dark side. I think that's the thing that people have a lot of problems with. But I mean, I can see having a moment of doubt. I
understand that.
By having a moment of doubt while you're raising a lightsaber in the air,
yeah,
that could be problematic.
No, I understand people. Right. I don't like. I'm not gonna like argue that point because I definitely understand where people are coming from with it. It works for you, it doesn't, type of thing.
Right. It is that type of thing. So you also had a video on how to prevent superhero fatigue, and I thought that was interesting. And I liked it because a lot of what your commentary was mirrors what I had thought about so-called superhero fatigue. Is like, as long as you keep developing new stories, then you're always going to have people come to these movies, because similar to the movie we just finished watching, and the movie that we just finished watching was like a parody of a lot of movies that came before it. So before superhero movies, we had like Sylvester Stallone or as either Rocky or Rambo, or we had Arnold Schwarzenegger as his various characters, or we had Bruce Willis, and they were basically our superheroes, and we never got tired of them. and so after that, they kind of graduated. But see, the thing was that they had different stories to work with. You know, it's like when you see a new movie with a new action hero, it was completely different from the movies that came before. So in that way, we never really got tired of it. And so you had mentioned that there could be superhero westerns and superhero comedies or like superhero horror movies, and we're actually starting to see that pan out, as you noticed. The only thing I would think is that you were like, you said you couldn't think of, at the time that you put out this video, this is right around Endgame. You had just seen it.
I think so, if I'm remembering the right video. I made a couple of videos similar, but probably right around Endgame. Right. Because that was sort of when everyone was like, is this like what happens now? Is superhero genre done? We sort of like reached the pinnacle or the climax. Where do we go? Right.
And they have no idea. So anyways, I mean, we know different now, but the only thing I would say is that you couldn't think of any like really memorable action pieces. I can't speak anymore. Action pieces from movies beyond like the first Avengers, and you like some scenes from Iron Man, but you felt that a lot of the other movies following were forgettable. And I was like, what? Come on, man.
I don't think I made my point very well there. I was
like, this is after Avengers Endgame. Come on, man. Captain America catching the hammer. Come on, man.
That's what I mean. Endgame has those great character moments. Like Captain America catching the hammer is an awesome moment. But it's like when using it, I feel like it doesn't, like the actual action beats of that, I feel like don't hold up as well to me as much as the moment where he catches the hammer, like that is epic. Or like Iron Man's sacrifice, that's like a big epic moment. I more so meant like the actual fight scenes, because if you compare it to something like The Matrix, because that came out in 1999, a lot of the action there has like more weight to it, and it feels more kinetic. And I feel like there's something about the Marvel movies where the fights don't, and honestly they're getting better. I feel like Hawkeye, the TV show, had a lot better action. Like there's this, I don't know if you've watched it, but there's the scene in the final episode where they're fighting on the ice rink. Like that has a lot of good weight and physicality to it. Or Shang-Chi had a lot better action, in my opinion, than some of the other ones. I think it's just the system they're working with right now, where it feels like all the action is done in post-production and very minimal of it is done on set. So it can kind of feel floaty. I know that's not a common complaint. I think that might just be me, honestly.
Right. Well, I'll just mention, like, besides Captain America or Thor coming down from the cloud. Well, actually, and he did it. He does it twice. So in Ragnarok, what happens is that he doesn't have a weapon. So it's like his power is just coming through him. So what happens is that a huge lightning strike comes down and it's like flat. It electrifies the battlefield, and he's just punching people with lightning punches. So that was cool. But then he does it again, but this time he has Stormbreaker. But this time it's like the Rainbow Bridge comes down and he electrifies the battlefield, and he's just, and the next thing you know, you see the hammer flying around. So that was good, but that's not the part I'm talking about. The part that was really neat to me, it's kind of a small part, but it's after Captain Marvel shows up during Endgame and she's fighting Thanos, and she's beating Thanos because she's way more powerful. She outclasses him, and they're fighting over the gauntlet. But then Thanos does something that was extraordinarily smart. He grabs the Power Stone from the gauntlet and activates it and uses it to punch Captain Marvel. And I thought that was just a very smart thing to do. And I think Marvel is pretty good at smart fights, not necessarily just punching to be punching. Like there's like even in the Avengers, Iron Man blasts Captain America's shield and he uses that to reflect the beam to shoot somebody else. Or
that's still probably my favorite action scene in a Marvel movie, is that whole, because it starts with Iron Man flying in and then it like transitions to Hawkeye on the building and it like pans between the whole thing and it looks like a splash page from a comic book almost. Right. That worked
extremely well.
And they did the same thing in Age of Ultron, where they're like all in a circle trying to defend. I forget what they're trying to defend, but they're trying to defend the generator or something. It's like making the city float before they can crash the city.
Right.
I don't remember Ultron very well, I don't think. But they do the same thing where they're all in a circle and the camera follows each of them as they have their own like epic moment and they do the team ups. And those are really, really, really cool moments. Sorry, my son's at the door screaming. I don't know if that's getting picked up.
Well, yeah, it did get picked up, but I'm glad it was your son and not the dog. That sounded like, it sounds great from a child, does not sound good from a dog, right?
No, he's at the door just screaming. Sorry.
Right. So tell the audience, where can they find your social media and your websites and your podcasts?
So I don't have a website right now, but if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's at the Nerdy Saint. That one's the one thing where I didn't have my name. And then the podcast I host, Real Belief, is at Real Belief Pod. And then if you just search Archie S. Atkinson, it should come up on YouTube. And I think that's all the socials I have. And then the podcast itself is on Spotify, Google Podcasts, anywhere you can get podcasts, basically. And it's just Real Belief. That's REEL, like a film reel.
Awesome. I really like that.
Thank you.
REEL. I was like, that's brilliant. Who thought of that?
I think a co-host, Xavier, did. I can't remember. I had to go through our texts talking about it. But
right. That's very, very clever. So let us go and get into what we are here to talk about. I said that we was going to talk about a classic movie, and indeed, the classic movie that we just watched was called Last Action Hero, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. If you would do me the honor, Archie, please let the audience know what this movie was about.
Yeah, so with the help of a magic ticket, a young movie fan is transported into the fictional world of his favorite action movie character. But what happens when that fictional hero and that hero's arch nemesis find their way into the real world?
And that was written by IMDb with a little bit of edits from me, because I had to edit it. It's like it was something crucial missing. They're missing the part where they cross over to the real world.
That's like, how do you miss that? I guess maybe they want to keep it brief, but even still, that's a big thing to miss.
Yeah, that's a pretty big deal. So this movie was released June 18th, 1993 by Columbia Pictures and Oak Production. It grossed over $50 million in the US and Canada and $137 million worldwide on an $85 million budget. It had, I wrote here middling reviews. Sometimes I keep forgetting to change that. I think nowadays it has middling reviews nowadays, but I think back then when it came out, it had poor reviews. But
I would imagine so.
Yeah. And as you can see from the box office grosses against his budget, it was basically a flop. It made very little money back from its release.
You take marketing to that, and it made nothing back. Probably.
Yeah, pretty much nothing. So this movie was starring Arnold Schwarzenegger as Jack Slater, and we know the movie that Schwarzenegger has been in. He's, we're so full of his work. So I thought I'd just talk about movies that he's supposed to be filming or he's supposed to be starring in or featured in. So I have Kung Fury 2 that's supposed to come out this year. And there's also a project. Yeah. There's also a project called U-Tabs, also Triplets. It's a sequel to Twins. And wait a minute, there's a sequel to Twins.
Danny DeVito?
Yes, with Danny DeVito. They've been talking about this movie for a while. And another one called The Legend of Conan. That's also a movie they've been talking about. If you can take the next one.
Yeah, so next we have F. Murray Abraham as John Practice, and he's known for Amadeus, Scarface, and 13 Ghosts, which 13 Ghosts, that's the Matthew Lillard horror, right?
It's more like a horror comedy. I don't know who did it. I don't
Matthew
remember
Lillard,
who
I think, stars in it. I could be.
It was Tony Shalhoub.
Okay.
Remember a movie with Tony Shalhoub? It was Tony Shalhoub and rapper Raw Digga. And I thought she did very well. I don't know why she didn't continue with her film career, but those are the only two people that I remember that was in that movie. But I felt that was a brilliant movie. It didn't really scare me. It didn't feel like a scary movie. It was just a fun movie to watch. It was closer to something like Gremlins than it was to something like Halloween or anything like that.
Definitely,
yeah. Have you seen that one?
If it's the one I'm thinking of, yeah. The only person I remember being in it is Matthew Lillard. So now I'm like, maybe not.
Right.
But he was like it's the like guy dies and they inherit his house, and the house has like the ghost trapped in it. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's
okay.
It.
Then it is what I'm thinking of. All right. Then yes, I had seen that.
Right. I hadn't seen it in a while, so I forgot what they had to do with the ghost. So they had to get rid of the ghost or something like that. I can't remember all that. I just remember that I enjoyed it.
Glasses to see them or something.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
It's gone from memory. So the next person that was in this movie was Art Carney. He played as Frank. He was in The Honeymooners as Ed Norton, Harry and the Hendersons. Harry and Tonto, and he was also in Firestarters. I don't know how I got the Hendersons in there. And
it's instinct after seeing Harry. I don't blame you.
Right, and I haven't seen much of The Honeymoon. I haven't seen much of The Honeymooners, but I remember that being a very important TV show, and Ed Norton was one of the main characters of that show.
Yeah, I know. I've seen a lot of parodies of it because like everybody's parodied it.
Yeah,
like Family Guy, Futurama. I don't think I've ever actually seen actual show though.
Right. So what's the next one?
We had Charles Dance as Benedict, and he was from Game of Thrones, Alien 3, and in the upcoming Sandman adaptation, which is supposed to be this year, 2022. And in Game of Thrones, he was Tywin Lannister, which is the like father of one of the big powerful houses.
Yes,
really, he's a really great actor. He's good in this too.
Absolutely, he really elevated this particular movie. I don't know if it would have worked without him or without his presence in this movie. Yeah, it was pretty awesome. And I always liked him since this movie. So the next person on this list is Frank McRae. He played Decker. He was in Loaded Weapon 1, License to Kill, and Lockup. So Frank Decker in this movie, he basically played a parody of himself because he's almost always playing a police captain or a police lieutenant or somebody in charge of police, right? So he was
makes sense.
Right. I think he was he in Lethal Weapon? I can't remember, but I remember that. No, I can't remember. Yep. I can't remember what he was in, but I remember watching a movie that was on this show where he played a police captain of some kind. So next up,
we had Tom Noonan as Ripper, and he's from RoboCop 2, Manhunter, and 12 Monkeys, the TV show. I don't think I've seen any of those. I've seen the first RoboCop, never any of the sequels.
Right, did see the sequel. Not worth wasting your time. Manhunter was also dog-eat-doo. And 12 Monkeys. I heard 12 Monkeys, the TV show, was great, but I never got into it. But he's
Bruce Willis one, which I don't think it was a TV show. It was a movie, I think.
Right, right. That's the movie. And he's rightfully creepy. It's like he's creepy in real life, as we saw in the movie. We also have Robert Prosky. Yeah. We also have Robert Prosky as Nick. He played he was in Thief, Mrs. Doubtfire, Dead Man Walking. And don't know much about him. Who's next?
Next, we have Anthony Quinn as Vivaldi. He's from Lawrence of Arabia, Zorba the Greek, and Lust for Life.
Yeah.
Only one of those I've seen is Lawrence of Arabia.
But at least you've seen that one. I haven't seen that one yet. I know that he's a very well-regarded actor. The only thing I know him from is Hercules, The Legendary Journeys. And I didn't watch it like religiously. I maybe have seen like tops, I'll say 15 episodes. I'll admit to seeing 15 episodes of all of that, but I hated that version of Hercules.
Somewhere around the same.
Right. But I hated that version of Hercules. That's why I couldn't watch it. Because I'm looking at it and I'm like, Hercules is too thin. I can't do it. I can't watch it. I grew up with Lou Ferrigno playing Hercules. I can't do a skinny Hercules. That hurts my heart.
Yeah.
So the next one.
Perfect sense.
So the next one on this list is Mercedes Rule. She played Mom. I don't know how or why they credited her as Mom. She was in The Fisher King, Big, and Married to the Mob.
Yeah, seen Big, not seen the other two, but
right. I hadn't seen any of those. Who's next?
Next, we have Austin O'Brien as Danny. And he's from My Girl 2, Promised Land, and The Lawnmower Man. Yeah,
so he didn't burn out immediately. He did have some movies. We also have
he's got a couple more on there.
Right. We also have Sir Ian McKellen. He played Death. He's been in X-Men, Lord of the Rings, and At Pupil. And I believe that's where most of our audience knows him from.
Probably the big two, X-Men and Lord of the Rings.
Right.
His biggest two.
Absolutely.
And
who's the last one I have on the list?
Last on this list, we have, I think the names are back here, Toru Tanaka as Professor from Pee-wee's Big Adventure, The Running Man, and Dark Man. That's right. I've seen all of those. First one, I've seen all of them, I think.
Right. I mixed that up, didn't I? I wrote that all wrong. I'm glad you figured that out. So, I like. Normally, I would put him a character like that in a movie because he doesn't even have like. I think he's credited as like the big Asian man. I think that's his credit, not Professor.
Oh, I didn't read the credits.
Right. But normally, I don't include that. But he's such a great character actor. Appearing in when he appears is basically playing himself as a big menacing dude. And so that's why I put him in here. There's also one person I forgot for some reason. I didn't see her immediately in the credits. And that is the woman that played Arnold Schwarzenegger's daughter in the movie. I don't even remember what her character's name was. I think it was Meredith or something like that. And the reason that it's important that I mention it now that I missed her was because right after this movie, she went on to start filming Mortal Kombat, the original theatrical release of Mortal Kombat. And she played Sonya Blade. So I thought I'd mention that.
I was looking at it the whole time, like, why do I know you? I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah. Her fights are better in this movie than it was in Mortal Kombat. I'll say that.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, but yes. Right.
This movie was directed by John McTiernan, and he's also directed Die Hard, The Hunt for the Red October, and Rollerball. And here's the thing I'll say before we actually get to the part where we talk about our favorite parts. I want to say that the fictional movie, this is a movie within a movie, and the movie that was within the main movie was actually pretty good. Like it could have stood out as its own movie if it wasn't so ridiculous.
It would have fit right in the time. Maybe a little more in the 80s if it a little bit better, but it's definitely a very. You could buy it. It passes. It's got, right. But it's not too absurd,
Right.
This is what the fourth one. So I mean, they're making 10 movies of franchises that no one even remembers. So you could definitely get away with it.
Right. Absolutely. So let us know who wrote this movie.
So this film was written, it looks like it has 3 screenwriters. You got Zach Penn, who is best known for Ready Player One, Avengers, and Hulk. Adam Leff, who would be best known for Biodome, PCU, and Crooked Arrows. And lastly, we have Shane Black, who apparently worked on the screenplay, and he's obviously known for The Monster Squad, Iron Man 3, all the Lethal Weapons. He was in Predator. He did the new Predator.
In Predator. He wrote Lethal Weapon. No, not Lethal Weapon. He wrote Die Hard while he was starring in Predator.
Mm-hmm.
So the dude is super talented. And also, I wanted to point out that you can look at this list and see the credits of what these men wrote and see who did the heavy lifting in the writing department. So it's like I can see, and you can actually see Shane Black.
Definitely
Shane Black,
of those, Shane Black stands out the most. Yeah.
Right. And Shane Black, basically, he signed this movie. He put his signature on a movie. Now, I'm going to ask you, do you know how he signed this movie in particular? Like, he didn't direct it, but he definitely wanted people to know he wrote it.
I don't know.
Well, in the very first line, in the very first scene, you have the police captain, and he says something like, "What a way to spend Christmas."
Oh, yeah. No, that makes sense.
Right.
Because he even made Iron Man 3 Christmas time. That's his deal.
Right. That is his deal. It's like every movie that he makes has to be a Christmas movie. Even
I haven't seen that new Predator, but is that one?
I'm not sure. But you said you saw Hawkeye. So do you know who wrote Hawkeye? Or who the showrunner was for Hawkeye?
Is it Shane Black?
Yes, it's Shane Black. You thought about it. You worked it through. Because the whole thing is around Christmas time. The whole point of the movie or the TV series, 6 episodes, is for Hawkeye to get back to his family by Christmas. So yeah,
Christmas. Yeah, you cannot avoid Christmas in that show.
You can't avoid Christmas from Shane Black. That's what the deal is. If he's going to involve, it's like they asked him, Shane, would you like to write? Would you like to write this project? And he says, you have a problem with Christmas? And they're like, no. It's like, oh, fine, we're doing it then.
All right, come on in.
So the music is by Michael Kamen. He wrote music for Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, The Iron Giant, and 101 Dalmatians, and many other movies and projects. It was actually pretty good. There's actually pretty good music. I really enjoyed it. The soundtrack was outstanding. I got some more info on the soundtrack in what do you call it? Trivia. Thank you. Appreciate that. Mine started blanking out right then and there. You know what? That's it for the rundown. That's it. And if you're enjoying this show, remember that you can get t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, face masks, jerseys, and more from our website, backclickcinema.com, where you can click on either the teespring.com or tpublic.com and peruse the merchandise. And now we're going to take a short news break. So this is the short news break. This is just some stuff I heard. Let me ask you something. Have you heard any stuff? Is any Archie? Is there any stuff in your neck of the woods in entertainment that you've heard about?
I saw that. I don't know if you've seen it. They released a trailer for the movie called The Northman or The Northman. I don't know which way you're supposed to pronounce it, but it's by Robert Eggers, who did The Witch and The Lighthouse. And if you haven't seen that trailer, that's a really dope trailer. You should check it out. It's basically like a Viking has to save his kidnapped mother, seems to be the premise, and it just looks like an epic, like, historical action movie. Outside that, not anything that's bringing to mind. If as we talk, something might come to mind, and I'll bring it up if there's a chance.
Right. I that sounds interesting. I'm going to look that up. That sounds like it's right up my alley. I seen the last movie I seen like that. It was a movie with Carl Urban. So Carl Urban played a Viking. He was left behind as a child. He was raised by Native Americans, and then when the Vikings come back, the natives are going to go and they're just going to fight them with bows and arrows. And Carl Urban was like, "No, that's not going to work. I can cut your wooden arrows with my metal giant knife. So that's
Mhm.
we gotta do a different tactic. So that was the last like pure Viking movie that I saw. That was pretty good. So
That sounds pretty cool.
yeah. So Northman sounds like I could get into that. So let me get into some of the stuff I heard this past week. According to InsideTheMagic.net, the Marvel Cinematic Universe may not be releasing 2 of its Disney Plus shows in 2022. Secret Invasion, starring Samuel Jackson, Emilia Clarke, and Kobe Smulders. Is that how you say that? Smulders?
It's Kobe Smulders, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And the second season of What If is not going to be released this year. This speculation is due to the official Marvel Japan removal of these 2 shows from their websites. Neither Kevin Feige or anybody important at Marvel has committed to the change from Japan's official MCU webpage. So I'm going to have to wait. I'm going to have to suck it up and wait. But there's so much other stuff that's coming out this year. So
I was going to say, we're still getting, 4 other Marvel shows this year, I think?
Right. So I think we can, and if you're a Star Wars fan, then everything is golden. So yeah. The next thing I heard is that Marvel announced a new Daredevil series. It's coming. It's done. We've speculated it. We've hoped for it. We've prayed to the Marvel gods, and we're going to get a new Daredevil series from Marvel, and that's from various sources. Screen Rant.
It's going to be exciting because that's great.
It was great on Netflix. We'll see what Marvel does with it.
Yeah, fair enough. But Hawkeye was good.
Yeah, Hawkeye was good. They did bring the screenwriters from Daredevil and I think it is The Punisher to work on Echo. Echo is the show that's most related to Daredevil. And if they're going to make a Daredevil series, they're probably going to have him show up in Echo. That'd be the most logical choice.
Maybe in Shulk.
Yeah, that's another speculation. Let's see.
He's a lawyer and she is might appear. Yeah,
that would make total sense. And Marvel is known for that. They're good at that.
Yeah,
they're good at throwing little characters in there, and then it's like little seeds that grow into greater characters. So Screen Rant, by way of Collider interviews, reports that director Roland Emmerich said that he hated the Game of Thrones finale so much that he confronted Thrones showrunner David Benioff about it. And that's being mad. Here's the funny thing about it. They're friends. So this is something that you would do with your friends, right? It's like you go to your friends like, what the fuck, dude? Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I thought we had a good thing going. You went and ruined it. What
right. You ruins it. So yeah, that was funny. So the next thing I heard.
Blame him.
Yeah, nobody blames him. He could have finished it so much better, so many different ways. It wasn't even really supposed to end. It was literally that he canceled himself.
He wanted to make stuff. Like he had a Star Wars contract and then was like, all right, rush it. And then he backed out of Star Wars contract and got a Netflix contract. And it's just like, pick something and make that.
Yeah. Because he wanted, like HBO wanted to at least do a full season. He only wanted to do half a season because they wanted to keep the money train going. But he wanted to make a show where they speculated what would happen if the Confederates won, and nobody wants to see that.
Yeah, I remember reading about that, and nobody wanted it. They were like, first of all, why you?
Right.
Second of all, why?
Why this? Well, let's be fair. There are some people who desperately want to see a show like this, but it is in very poor taste. It's like I'm gonna do a show, right? It's like I want to do a show of somebody taking a crap. It's like no, we don't want to see that show. No, there are some people, but those people are deranged. We don't stop that.
Don't pander those people.
Right. So, anyways, something else I heard from IFS Science, and I believe that says. I think that means I fucking love science. So in ifscience.com, YouTuber Alec Berkman from Alex Lab, the Alex Lab YouTube channel wins the world record. This is the Guinness Book of World Record for the first retractable lightsaber. So I watched this video. I will leave this video in the show notes, or a link to the video in the show notes. And it is fascinating. It basically looks like a very narrow torch, but it's retractable. It's not hooked up to anything. It's all the whatever mechanics he got to get it to work is all in the handle. So he's
That's
literally
really
just
cool.
holding it. Have you seen the latest episode of the Book of Boba Fett? Are you watching that at all?
I haven't. I'm behind on that. I want
Okay,
to
well
watch it, but
you know that the Mandalorian has the dark saber.
yes, I do know that.
So
Yeah.
we understand in the series of the Book of Boba Fett, you will understand why lightsabers and similar types of weapons are extraordinarily dangerous, right? They talk about,
Mhm.
and that's what
Yep. Nope.
that is what the lightsaber, the real life lightsaber that this dude makes, that it looks as dangerous as you would expect a lightsaber to be. I think it runs like 4,000 degrees or something like that. He can cut through
Oh
steel
yeah.
almost like a lightsaber would. But it does look like an elongated like flaming torch.
Like a
It's
plasma
kind of,
torch or something.
yeah, and it still looks it still looks very cylindrical. So
Mhm.
it's way more cylindrical than an ordinary like flame would be. So it's good on him for he's literally building this stuff on his own. So
That is
that's a
really cool.
that's crazy actually. So in other news, IGN posted a Deadline article claiming that a Mortal Kombat 2 has been greenlit and Moon Knight writer Jeremy Slater is going to be writing. So that's okay. I'm
Maybe
down
they'll
for it.
actually have a Mortal Kombat. It'll be fun.
Yeah. They claim that was supposed to happen in the second movie. They were telling us in the first movie that we'll get a Mortal Kombat in the second movie. So we'll see how that.
Like, here's your setup, basically.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. And hopefully Cole gets killed in the first round. Anyway, on to the next news. InsideTheMagic.com reports that basically the stars that portrayed the main characters will be done with the Guardian of the Galaxy franchise after Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Though some characters will reprise their roles in Thor, Love and Thunder, director James Gunn indicated that this will be the end of the story for this version of the Guardians. So I think this kind of indicates that he's kind of going to focus on Suicide Squad.
Yeah, I know he's doing that. He's doing Peacemaker, and he's apparently developing like 2 or 3 other things for DC, is what I was reading, which is could be interesting. I like his style and takes. He can do interesting stuff with characters that I never thought I'd see Starro in live action, and we got it. So whatever he does, I'm excited for.
He went there. He not only did he do Starro, but he made it work. He made it believable. He did all of the Starro things. Like he didn't sugarcoat it. Like a lot of stuff that they do with the studios when it finally gets to live action is that they'll sugarcoat it or they'll downgrade it or they'll change it in some sort of way. It's like we're not going to go all the way. We want to ground it in some sort of way, but not James Gunn. He gave us the entire Starro, right?
It made it scary too. Like it was a joke, but it was also terrifying.
Right. They went there, so that was good. So have you seen the Peacemaker series?
I haven't seen the episode that dropped on Thursday, which I think is 5, but I've seen 1 through 4, and I'm really liking it so far. It's
right. So
right up my alley.
It is absolutely amazing. It's you've seen one more episode than I have, and I just to your point about the superhero fatigue. I believe that filmmakers are understanding that they can't make the same product over and over again. Mm-hmm. They've got to expand and do something different. And I think that is exactly what is happening with Peacemaker. It's so off the wall, right? It is.
It knows that comic books are inherently silly and embraces it. Like comics, right? Even the most serious comics have goofy aspects to them, and it embraces that. Like I think it was in episode 3 where they mentioned Batmite. And it's just like they didn't show him, but they mentioned Batmite. That's like never a character you think they'd even acknowledge in a live action thing, but they did. Maybe one day we'll see him in live action, which would be exciting.
Right. that was pretty awesome. So it's everything is ridiculous and Peacemaker, and I'm here for it. But that is all I got for the news. That's all the stuff that I heard that I felt like copying and pasting. So I'm gonna go on to the other segments. So we're back once again. Thanks for joining us. As a reminder, you can keep up with us by following our socials on Instagram and Facebook at Backlook Cinema Podcast and on Twitter at Backlook Cinema. We encourage you to leave feedback, comments, suggestions, etc. Or you can email us at fanmail@backlookcinema.com. So now This is the nitty gritty of this program. We talk about our favorite parts of the show. And Zachary had told me some of his favorite parts after we had finished watching. Let me pull up my notes over here on this fancy schmancy tablet computer that I have here. And what did I write? So three things that he had pointed out. He liked the fake out. He didn't realize that this was going to be a movie within a movie. So when it opens up on the Jack Slater movie, he thought that was a movie that he was watching. And then it gets to the part where it's a kid watching Jack Slater in the movie theater. So he enjoyed that. He liked the car chase in the movie, especially how they're playing chicken, which was kind of ridiculous the way they did in the movie. And I liked how they compared the movie version to playing chicken to what happens in real life.
Yeah.
And then there's basically the premise of the first part of the movie is the kid, I can't remember the kid's name, but the kid is trying to convince, Danny, you're correct. His name is Danny. So Danny is trying to convince Jack Slater that they are living in a movie world, and Jack Slater does not recognize any of this. And I agree with him. Those are great parts. So for example, when Danny is trying to Danny tells him it's a cartoon cat, and they're like, yeah, he's supposed to be back on duty. He was only suspended for a month, right? Or he's trying to prove it by when they go to the video store and they're looking for an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, but they only find Sylvester Stallone. Or there's another part where, what was that? Oh, while they're at the video store, they ask them what their phone numbers are, and everybody has a 555 number, and it's like, well, there's only more about 9,000 combinations that you could possibly have with a 555 number, and there are millions of people living just in San Francisco or Los Angeles, and so how do you account for the number disparity? And Schwarzenegger goes, area codes, right? And then the other one where everybody was way too hot. All the women were way too hot to be in this to be a real life, and it's not something. And it's like all of the things, all of the efforts that he's done to try to prove that this was a movie and not real life, and he liked all of those parts. So I got to ask you,
it's all real interesting.
Yeah. So what was your favorite parts of the movie?
So similar to that, it's when Danny's in that world and he goes to the police station. He's talking to Schwarzenegger's character, and he says, I can't remember exactly how he words it, but he tells him you can't trust your partner. He killed Mozart because the actor was in the Amadeus movie. It's just a fun little I know this guy. And then another thing is when Sir Ian McKellen character shows up towards the latter half where he plays Death from specifically from the Seventh Seal movie, the Ingmar Bergman one, which that's just interesting because that's also what Death in Bill and Ted was based off of, is that same movie one. So it's just fun seeing that character reinterpreted in so many different removed different ways. And obviously Ian McKellen, great, always great.
That was a thrilling part of that movie, and how he moved and how he spoke. It's almost like the way you would expect Death to move and talk. And as he's walking through the street, he's carrying a giant Sith, and nobody really notices him. So he touches a police officer and then just kind of walks away. You can see the officer start to choke in the background. He's just Death. He's just doing his thing.
Kid holds him at gunpoint at one point. It's like, he's Death. What are you gonna do? Shoot him? Right. I don't think it's gonna work, dude.
Right. But it's funny. He just said that he was curious. He's not on any of my lists. And then he was like, offended. He was like, I don't do fiction.
Yeah.
So it's funny. He's like, and we see him as a fictional character coming out of a movie theater, but at the same time, he's a concept, or at least the embodiment or personification of death is a concept. So as a concept, he can kill real people. So that I think that is what they were going for in the movie. So I thought that was all fantastic. So I like the over the top action sequences were great, but it's funny. it was in the fake movie. So there were over the top action sequences. And these were the things like every time the action character shoots his gun, it's like, the car blows up or you can punch through glass with ease or something like that. But even in the real world,
take no damage and stuff.
Right. But even in the real world, they kept some of it. So it's kind of like inconsistent. So like he's ripping off of like taxi car doors. Like you can't do that in real life. You're not that strong, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, at least he gets injured in the real world. Like they take some damage. That's what they tone it down a little bit, but yeah, he's still doing impossible feats of strength. And,
right.
I mean, he's all Schwarzenegger things.
Right. Yeah, they gotta have that. I remember there was one movie is a commando he was in, and it's like he breaks into like the back of the plane, which I'm okay with, but there's a part where it's like you have like the regular part of the plane where the people stay, and then I think the part where they keep the storage compartment where they keep the luggage and whatnot. So there's a fabric that separates the passengers and the luggage. Now, I don't know if this is real, but this is what they show in the movie. So because it's fabric, he just takes his finger and he just kind of punches through it, right? But it's like that cannot possibly be real. Like I don't know if this part exists in the plane, but it wouldn't be so easy to just poke your fingers through and then rip the fabric apart. It's not that, no. Right. It's not that type of fabric. So you kind of see some of that in this movie, and at the same time they're trying to make a parody of. So can you think of anything else that you really liked about the movie?
The exploding eye is good. The glass eye, and he shoots it, and
right.
Like that. That's really good. I mean, it's just anything where there's a gimmick like body part set up like that, and then obviously it explodes. Like that's always super satisfying to see. And this one's done really well because you shoot him with a revolver, detonates the eye. It's just a good little,
right.
Like,
so right. That so I like a lot of the over the topness in the movie within the movie. So one of the things that like after the house explodes, the guy had basically he sets the bomb off in the eye and blows up the house, and then you have Jack Slater and Danny in the police station being screamed at by the captain. The captain is screaming so hard and his head is so hot that there's steam coming out of his ears. It's like and it's just absolute gibberish. It's like you can't understand. He's not really saying anything that anybody can understand. I think at one point he says something about Alice in Wonderland. It's just a bunch of gibberish that he's just screaming at these people. And one thing I'll say about that actor is like he truly knows how to scream. I mean, he puts his full emotion into screaming. And I feel like he practices that in the mirror, like just wakes up every morning. Yeah. And he's like, like I can't even do it. It's just amazing what he can accomplish with
like the drill sergeant from what is it? His Full Metal Alchemist, the drill sergeant who's just his whole thing is just screaming in people's faces. It's like that level where you're like, that's that guy's one job and he does it like perfectly.
And yeah, that's like every like training movie ever. In every movie where there is a drill sergeant, they're gonna have that yelling guy. And it's not far from the truth because I went to basic training and they did a lot of yelling in that one. So it's not like they're faking it, or it's not an exaggeration. The drill sergeants themselves, they feel like cartoon characters. They feel like caricatures because most people that go to basic training have seen all of these movies where drill sergeants are portrayed. So
expect it.
Right. So I'm trying to think of some other parts because now I'm already starting to lose my memory. It's already starting to fade because this is I'm getting old. I'm 50, so memory, and I forgot to take notes. It's another thing. I was supposed to take notes in the movie. Didn't take any notes. Just really going off the top of my dome. Right. So I'm going to skip ahead to like near the end of the movie. Right. So they're in the real world. They're chasing the Ripper. They're a very creative name. So they're chasing the Ripper, and it's actually I really like how they kind of thought of how they wanted to get rid of their opponents, like the bad guys specifically. The guy with the glass eye, whatever his name was. Benedict, right? Yeah. So, it is Benedict. So Benedict is like, well, if we kill the actor who plays Jack Slater, then
Then
we
Jack
will
Slater
kill Jack
won't
Slater. Right,
exist.
right.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, that is
It's really
so
smart.
brilliant. Yeah, not only that, but it's smart to find a movie where Zach's or maybe you watched the video where Jack Slater was playing, and then pull his worst enemy out of that out of that film. And then he planned on getting other ones. Like you saw the list, he was like, okay, I'm gonna get Dracula, I'm gonna get Freddy Krueger. He's talking about getting Hannibal Lecter. He had a whole list of guys that he wanted to bring into the real world and just do what they want.
Yeah.
So
let him run free and
just let him run free. And he doesn't want anything. He just wants to cause chaos. What he did not want to work for somebody else. His last boss is an idiot, and he didn't want to work for anybody like that again. So he just doesn't want money, he doesn't want power, he just wants to cause chaos. So there was one so at the end of the movie, they're chasing the guy, and oh shoot, hopefully I haven't lost my train of thought, because that will happen. So so they're chasing the guy, and Arnold runs into a bunch of celebrities playing themselves. So they have a red carpet interview with Jim Belushi, and Jim Belushi was talking about, yeah, I hate that guy. I don't care for the guy too much. I'm only here because my wife likes it. Now, did you catch that was the joke? That comment was the joke.
Sorry, repeat it. I sort of lost you there. My internet cut out. Sorry.
Yeah, no problems. Jim Belushi, he was talking about, they were doing a red carpet interview, and Jim Belushi was saying how he didn't care for the Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. Do you get that? While that was a joke,
I don't.
Well, because Arnold Schwarzenegger actually starred in a movie with Jim Belushi. So when he was saying that was the joke, is that they was in a movie, I think it was called Raw Deal. So they was actually in a movie together, because I didn't get it at first, and then I remember, oh yeah, that's right, they're in the movie together. And then during the chase scene, they actually bump into Damon Wayans and Chevy Chase, and but they don't say anything. You just notice that they were there.
They're just there. Yeah.
And then remember the musician that asks Schwarzenegger, when he's asking Jack Slater, thinking that he's Schwarzenegger, the deal is done with the soundtrack, right?
Yeah, it's MC Hammer, right?
Yes, you remember MC Hammer. My son Zach, he's nearly your age. Yes, or I don't know if he's a little bit older, a little bit younger than you are, but he didn't know MC Hammer. He didn't know who that was. So I wanted to see if you did. And of course, you have Jean-Claude.
Barely, but it took me a minute to click that it's in.
Right. He had his real life wife, Maria Shriver, in it, and that's a funny. Yeah, that was his real life wife, and at the time, obviously they're not married anymore, but at the time that this movie was made, they were married. And the funny thing about that was that when they were making this movie, they were actually going to hire another actress to play his wife, because she didn't want to do it. And he went to her, it's like, this is silly. They're going to hire somebody else. Just do it. It's like, it's you. You don't have to do anything. You're just acting like you are. And she did a very good job playing herself. Yeah. Right? It looks so natural. And he was even... Schwarzenegger was being a parody of himself, playing himself, plugging the restaurant and doing all of these things, and basically over talking, like in the last movie, we killed 114 movies. We kill 114 people, and this movie we only kill 41. So we really want to work on the character development, right? So, and he's just kind of droning on and on. So a funny thing about Schwarzenegger's accent, I was an Uber driver for a while, and I pick up a lot of different people. So I actually picked up a passenger who was from the same country as Arnold Schwarzenegger. And the funny thing is that we listened to his accent, and he sounds like he's got a strong Russian accent or whatever. But when he goes home to like his birth country, to them he sounds weird. To them, his accent has changed so much that he sounds like a weird foreigner speaking Russian. So I thought that was a unique thing about his accent, is that he sounds weird to us, and he sounds weird at home. And right? So,
yeah.
So I guess that's something
my parents are kind of the same way now. They're I was born in England, moved to the US when I was like 6. So obviously I don't have an accent, but my parents still do, but it's like half in, half out. So it's like some words they say completely American, some words they say completely English. So it's like they don't quite fit in here or at home anymore. It's like a weird middle ground of accent.
Right.
It just sort of happens over time.
I imagine if they go back home, they will get their accent back, but they would have to go back to the same area, and you would have to stay there for a little bit because they're still going to sound a little bit funny. Right. Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Right. So I'm trying to think. There was another part. All right. Here's a part that I love because it has lived with me ever since. I think this may have been only like the third time I've seen this movie. I haven't seen this movie since maybe when it first came out. Mm-hmm. So it's a line that lives with me to this day. So there's a part with Benedict when he first gets through the portal, he first comes into the real world and he notices that some dude gets shot and killed over his shoes. And he's like fascinated by this and nobody comes. Like nobody notices, nobody screams like, oh my God, somebody call the police, somebody call 911. Nobody, nothing happened. It's like, it's just dude just dead in the street and there are zero consequences over some shoes. And he's fascinated by this. And he wants to go out and experiment. And he sees some guy in a garage and he says, excuse me, I want to, test out a theory. The guy says, what? And he shoots him and, loud bang, nothing happens. So he fires off a couple of rounds. Nothing happened. He's like, hello? I just shot somebody and I did it on purpose. I just committed murder. And they're like, you shut up. It's like, and that's when he had the revelations that the bad guys can win in this world because it's like nobody really cares. Right. He looks at his watch. Yeah, he shoots a guy. He looks at his watch. There's no sirens. Nobody's screaming. Nothing. Right. And so, it's like the bad guys can win. And sadly, he is correct. So that was, I think that the main motivation for him in this movie is that he really wanted to win because it's like he's in the fictional world. He feels like he's not going to win. He's working for an idiot, right? So it's like, how can he possibly win? So like how Vivaldi, he kept getting the idioms wrong, right? Colloquialisms. He would get them all wrong. Like so, he would say easy as cake when it's supposed to be easy as pie. Or like my favorite one before he got killed, he's like, how can you do this? You're doing a 360 on me. It's like, it's not a 360. It's a 180, you idiot. If I did a 360, I would turn around and be facing the same way. And the guy's looking at him like he's so confused. He does not get it. And then that's when he kills his old boss. So that was a funny part. And I am running out of parts to think about. You got anything?
I mean, like the plans are all smart. I think we kind of touched on it, killing the actor to stop the movie. There's also the kill a rival mob boss with, what is it, gas or something like that. They're gonna do like all the plans are sort of like really interesting.
Leo Lafont, and Leo Lafont is going to pass gas who won last time. That was actually a good line. I like that. The whole rescue plan was kind of ridiculous.
Like it's perfect. Like the line delivery is too. It's like it's exactly like perfect. Like heightened. This is a '90s action movie. Like that pass gas thing. It's just like that. Right. It fits in, and it's like so heightened that it is a parody, even though it's like also something you could see in an actual serious movie. Someone's saying,
right? Absolutely. So there are so many things. It's packed with. You almost have to watch it a couple of times to catch everything. But overall, how did you feel about this movie?
I really enjoyed it. I wouldn't necessarily say it's like
to hate it.
Great movie.
I
liked it. I mean, it's fun. Like that's all. Like it's a fun movie. You just sit there, watch it. I mean, the music is great. You have like what AC/DC's in there. I think was it Led Zeppelin was in there. I thought I might be misremembering who I heard, but there was a lot of good music in there. And it's just a good fun time. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say it's obviously not going to win any Oscars, but like if you're just wanting a good fun movie, it's worth a watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. As a matter of fact, it's one of the reasons I go to movies where I like movies where I can kind of turn my brain off. Like not
Mhm.
so outrageous where it's so unrealistic that it turns me off, but
Mhm.
just enough where I can suspend my beliefs and
Mhm.
was suspend my how does the phrase go? Suspend my
Disbelief.
disbeliefs and
Yeah.
yeah, suspend my disbelief and really just give myself to the story and just kind of watch the movie. Like turn the old brain
Mhm.
off, relax, sit there, enjoy. Because there are some movies where it's like you really have to pay attention to, right, in order to
Yeah.
get the story. So you have movies like
Mhm.
The Hand to Rock the Cradle or maybe any Sherlock Holmes movies or something like that where you really have
Mhm.
to pay attention
Pay
to what's going
attention.
on,
Yeah.
right, to get the story. But this one, no, not really. If you pay attention, you catch some jokes. There's this movie Spy that I seen with I can't remember her name, but it was she's one of my favorite comedians. She was in that the female ghost people call it the female Ghostbusters.
Melissa McCarthy.
Yes, Melissa McCarthy, and she was that movie was so funny because the jokes came at like 1,000 miles per hour. So you really
Mhm.
did have to pay attention to that movie in order just to catch all of the jokes because it came so
Mhm.
fast
It's with
because they were
Jason
talking so.
Statham, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that it
that's a
was
good one.
brilliant. So so yeah, but this is the type of movie it was just I really like
Mhm.
movies that are fun, that are intended to be fun. They're not trying to pretend to be something more grand or something that it's not. So yeah, I don't
Yeah.
understand why it failed. I don't understand the critical response. The critical response don't make any sense to me. And we're going to talk about what the critics thought. But before we do that, we're going to get into trivia that I pulled up from IMDb, where they serve all of our trivia needs. So if you can scroll it down and start us off with the first tidbit of trivia.
Yeah. So filming on this movie continued until the week before the movie debuted in theaters, which is
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah, that is
Just
wild.
logistically.
Not right. It's wild. Just see because right after they finished filming, the stars have to go out promote it, and on Arnold Schwarzenegger in particular did a lot of promoting.
Mhm.
He went out of his way to promote this movie. Like kudos to him and trying to create a success. And this movie should have been wildly successful, but it was not.
It should have
So
been. If it's released
yeah,
now, I think it would be. Like
right. And I have a theory about that. My theory is like this is one of the earliest parody movies, and it did it in a different way, where instead of being
Mhm.
a straight parody movie, it was a movie within a movie. So they crafted an adventure around it. It was extremely creative, I
Mhm.
believe. So um and I don't know if there were a lot of parody movies like at that time. Like I remember some like
Mhm.
there was a scary movie, and then there was that was a parody of all the scary movies. There was Not Another Teen
Mhm.
Movie. There were all of these movies that were coming out to varying
I
success.
mean, it's
So
post Mel Brooks, so you would have already had. I think Blazing Saddles would have already been out or around the same time.
right,
Um,
well,
Spaceballs and
no,
stuff like that would have been
yeah,
probably before,
Spaceballs
right?
would have been out. Yeah, Spaceballs would have been out. Blazing Saddles came out in like the 70s. So I don't know why. I don't understand why. It should have been great and it wasn't.
I think
So
it's because it's not a traditional parody in that it is strictly making like it's not strictly a comedy like Blazing Saddles or Spaceballs where it's hardline parodying. It's more so this is an action movie. It's just taken to such an extreme that it becomes a parody. So I think that sort of dichotomy changes it a little bit and makes it a little
right,
harder because it's also meta, and I know meta stuff tends to not be liked by a lot lot of people. At least
right.
so
That
from what I've noticed,
right.
people don't like meta.
I also I also like that they kind of really put into consideration a fictional character coming into the real world and the trauma that it would cause. Like,
Yeah.
when he doesn't like Slater does not believe that he is in a fictional movie until he comes over to the real
Mhm.
world. And when he comes to that realization, it's like, what, somebody just made me up, right? He
Mhm.
has to come to that realization. And then there is one where he's kind of down about it for a little while because he lost his son because somebody decided to make that up. And then when
Mhm.
he finally meets like the person who portrays him in the real world, he's like, I don't really like you caused me nothing but pain. Right. So
Yeah.
that was
There's a I think it's Animal Man. It's a DC comic from the early 90s, I think, around the same time, probably like 92, 93. And that whole thing is he finds out that he's a comic book character and he meets the author and he's just like, my family died. Why? He's like, the author's like, I thought it'd be good drama. And it's just I like that idea. It's weird, and I understand people don't like it, but I like that idea of the fictional characters being like, I am fake. What does that mean for myself? Like having that sort of dread and like panic of like, okay, what's real then? And then meeting the creator and being like, what have you done to me? Why have you done this? Like, why do I exist? And why am I just suffering? You could make my life better, but you don't.
Right. And what's intriguing is that he had the opportunity to meet his creators, unlike many of us in the real world.
Yeah.
And another comic like that was John Byrne's run on She-Hulk, where in his version of She-Hulk, she knew that she was in a comic and she would often break the fourth wall. And they did that in this movie. It's like not only figuratively, but literally, where Benedict actually turns to the screen and tells people what he's going to do, right? So he actually, it was very subtle, but he fully breaks the fourth wall. And there was one, Deadpool was famous for that. In every media that he's been in, he has broken the fourth wall. So even there's a game that I play, it's one of them, I think it's Marvel versus Capcom. And there's a move that he does, as a special move where he grabs the power bar. It shows how much life that the character has, and that's a special move we have where you can hit somebody with his power bar. So, or when he dies, he says you're pushing the wrong button.
No, those games are great.
Right. Deadpool is brilliant. So moving on to the other little trivia tidbit I found. Arnold Schwarzenegger thought the script was one of the best he's ever read. He especially liked all of the elements of comedy, action, drama, and satire in it. You know, Arnold Schwarzenegger was correct. He was correct in liking the script.
Yes. And this film was also the first time that Arnold Schwarzenegger ever took a producing credit on one of his movies, or on a movie.
Right. And that would explain why he worked so hard in promoting the movie, right?
And definitely wanted it to be a success.
Right. He had a vested interest in that. So Charles Dance said in interviews that after being told that he had won a part that was turned down by Alan Rickman because of salary, he wore a T-shirt on set that read, "I'm cheaper than Alan Rickman," right?
I love that.
Right. He sounds like a fun guy to be
Although
around.
Alan Rickman probably would have actually been pretty good in this role too.
He would have been. Yes, absolutely.
I'm just picturing perfect. Hans Gruber, basically. Just Hans Gruber, just copy paste.
I think they would have just they would have had him do like an exaggerated version of Hans Gruber. I think
Hans Gruber times 10 or something.
Right. So what's next on the list?
The AC/DC song "Big Gun" was written specifically for this movie after Arnold Schwarzenegger personally approached the group and asked them to write a song for it. That's cool.
Yes, that is super cool. That is absolutely fascinating. I really love that little factoid. So to be able to have the clout to just go to Rockman, it's like, I really need you to write a song for me. And they were like, shoots, right?
Yeah, go for it.
And it's actually a pretty good song, right? So that whole aspect is great. So the merchandising people came up with some Jack Slater action figures with guns. Arnold Schwarzenegger vetoed the idea because the movie was a warmer, more cuddly action movie. Merchandising included 7 video games, a $20 million Burger King promotion, a $36 million theme park ride, NASA's first paid ad in space, and a 4-story inflatable Jack Slater at Cannes. Schwarzenegger gave 40 television interviews and 54 print interviews in 24 hours, setting a new personal record. That is ridiculous.
That is, I don't even, where's the theme park ride even? Like, what theme park would do, where would that be built?
I don't even know.
Definitely on the video games, having never seen the movie. I think it's like a side scroller on I want to say the Super Nintendo.
Right, so it probably is. But
or it's like it's like a tank game for some reason. I think
Right.
it's weird.
We should look up the video. So somebody's got it on YouTube. So let's see, $20 million Burger King promotion, and then a $36 million theme park. We don't know how much it was for NASA to put an ad in space, but I seriously doubt that it was cheap. So that's at least $60 million right there. Okay,
at least match the budget. Yeah, probably match the budget in advertising.
They thought this movie was going to make so much money.
Yeah, I mean, it should have.
Yeah. So what's the next thing?
All right. So Arnold Schwarzenegger wanted this movie to be PG-13 so it would appeal to a broader audience. Being executive producer for the first time, he approved script, director, cast, studio financing, distribution, marketing, budget, PR firm, planning a foreign release, etc. Schwarzenegger enjoyed the added responsibility because he could be involved in every facet of production. Yeah, that's good on him. You know,
right.
I feel like now there's a lot of actors who produce their own stuff, but he's probably one of the first big examples is this, because I can't think of too many that were doing it.
I think that's some of them, I think they would just get producer credit as like for being in the movie. So like, especially if it's a franchise movie, it's like after the like second movie, the third movie, you'll probably see a producer credit just to keep them on. But I think a lot of it is like, so Arnold is doing way more than just getting credit, right? He's actually doing the work that a producer would do to make sure that the movie makes money.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the major reasons for this movie's box office failure was the unforgiving process needed to have it ready for the studio mandated June 18th, 1993 release date, which left almost no time for follow-up editing or fine-tuning after a disastrous May 1st sneak preview. There were discussions about moving the releases to July or August 1993, especially when Universal deliberately chose to open Jurassic Park from 1993 on June 11th. But it was decided that doing so would turn off potential moviegoers. When this movie was released and received widespread criticism, an anonymous movie worker said, "We shouldn't have had Siskel and Ebert telling us this movie is 10 minutes too long," right? So
that's never
the studio
made good endorsement.
The studio made all the mistakes in this one. People were afraid to announce they were pushing back release dates because that was signaled that there was trouble with the movie or whatever. But you went up against Jurassic Park.
Yeah, and that was one of those movies where week 2 would have been big because it's one of those movies of word of mouth, like built up. So the second week it was probably bigger than the first week. Honestly, it probably steamrolled this movie. I didn't realize that's what it was up against. You don't stand a chance. It's like going up against Star Wars. You're not going to make money. Or Spider-Man, just in December, like nothing made money because Spider-Man took it all.
Right. That you gotta watch the movies and you gotta plan carefully. You gotta be more strategic. I know studios nowadays are way more strategic than they used to be, but because it's like they'll have like a rom-com and they'll put that out because they figure that it's an alternative superhero movie, and that strategy generally works because you can't just have a bunch of action movies in a movie theater and not have an alternative because not everybody watches those. But they really messed up. They dropped the ball on that one, son. So
so much so that Arnold Schwarzenegger considered this movie his first real failure after an unbroken string of successes. He also considered it the beginning of the end of his movie career, which was probably true at the time, but he's sort of come back now. So beginning of the first end.
Yeah, he definitely I don't know what his movie was after The Last Action Hero, but I'm pretty sure he bounced.
Would have been.
No, not true. It wasn't True Romance. No, I know what it was. It was True Lies you're thinking about.
True Lies, that's what I'm thinking of. You're right.
Yeah, True Lies with what's her name from Halloween? I can't remember.
Jamie Lee Curtis. Yeah,
right. So and that was a great movie. That's definitely going on the list.
James Cameron, right?
Yeah, I believe so. It's really it's what threw me for a loop was Arnold Schwarzenegger and that comedian that married Roseanne. What's his name? But Tom Arnold. So his name is Tom Arnold. So I never seen Tom Arnold in anything. I just knew that he was a comedian, and I knew that he was married to Roseanne. It's like he was famous for being married to Roseanne, not because of his own
comedy.
Yeah, his own comedy or his own agency. But I think he was actually a writer on the old Roseanne TV show. And I think that and obviously he's a comedian, so he was good and we just didn't know it. That's what that was about.
Yeah.
So moving right along, the original screenplay was developed by Adam Leff and Zach Penn with Arnold Schwarzenegger in mind for the lead. And it was titled Extremely Violent. After Columbia Pictures purchased the script, the studio independently approached Arnold about the movie. Arnold's decision came down to either the now titled Last Action Hero or a Penny Marshall directed Columbia comedy called Sweet Tooth. The script was later rewritten by Shane Black and David Arnott to rev up the action sequences. William Goldman did a $1 million polish when Arnold made it clear that he would not begin filming until Goldman added depth to the characters. And you know what's funny? I think as I read this, I realized that that's where it came to Arnold experiencing trauma over the death of his son when he got to the real world. That was probably added by that guy. But you notice that I didn't mention his name when we were talking about the credits and the writers of the film, William Goldman or David Arnott. And what I just learned, what I just found out is that the rules say that you can only have 2 writers credited to a film. They can't have any more than 2. You can have a writing team, like 2 people who normally write together, and they can count as one person. So you can have those 2 people plus one other person. Or you can have like 2 partners. So you can have up to 4 people as long as they're in 2 writing teams. But you can't have any more than 2 people credited. So that's why you don't see a lot of these other people on film or in the credits.
Guild rules and stuff. Yeah. It's the same with directors. I think you can't have 2 credited directors unless they're a established directing team like the Wachowskis or the Russos.
They actually have to be siblings, not a directing team. They have to be siblings. That's why you have the Russo brothers or the Wachowski sisters.
Yeah.
Then you can have 2 directors.
Or the Coen brothers. Yeah.
Right. There was a famous thing where Sin City. So Robert Rodriguez wanted to co-direct with the comic book writer of Sin City, but the guild wouldn't allow it. It's like either you or him, it cannot be both. So he left the guild and put both of their credits on the movie as directors.
I remember that.
That's fascinating. It's like all the background shenanigans that goes on it's
great. A lot of intense, just like guild like negotiations and stuff between everybody. It's wild.
Right.
So the next piece of trivia is Sharon Stone's casting in a brief cameo as her Basic Instinct 1992 character was somewhat surprising because she and Arnold Schwarzenegger had clashed on the set of Total Recall in 1990. She was reluctant to do the cameo, but did it as a favor to Schwarzenegger, who reminded her that Total Recall had helped her career.
Yeah, he's apparently he's either influential or manipulative. You decide. But it was nice to see her cameo because it was just quick when she just walks out the police station in the same dress where all the controversy about that film. Well, that's what people remember about that film. They remember
it's
her
the one shot.
And the white dress. They don't remember anything else. They don't remember what the movie was about. They just remember that. And they had her walk out with the white dress, and that's great. And then they also had and I was surprised that Zach noticed because I'm not sure if he I don't even know if he saw Terminator 2. I think he probably did because I think we would have done that movie already. But when the T-1000 comes out at the same time, did you see that?
So Robert Patrick, right?
Yeah, Robert Patrick. Yes, yeah.
Who's also in Peacemaker.
Absolutely, and he's great in Peacemaker. He's like he's a lovable racist in Peacemaker. Let's put it that way.
He's a really good actor. Yeah, his character very not a good person.
Yeah, concentrated evil, that character.
Yeah,
I think.
Yep, exactly.
And lovable racist because he's not. What do you call it? He's not being. He's not hiding it. Let's put it that way. He's not. You know exactly where he's standing.
Oh yeah,
he doesn't care.
I think is the end of episode 3 where he's in he does like the rally thing in prison. Is that?
I think that, that's in the end of episode 3. He doesn't do a rally. He just sits down, and then all the white guys in prison go and basically kneel before him. And they do a kind of Nazi salute.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's like, not subtle.
Right. Not subtle at all. So moving right along. Oh, wait, before we go on, did you know there were action after credit scenes? Have you seen those?
I didn't know. I should have probably checked if there were, but
I didn't know either. I was about to skip to the next episode, and then I saw an image on the fast forward screen, and I was like, "Oh my god, let me check this out." So it's more like it's like after the English credits, they have like foreign credits, and so sometimes the scene is right there, and sometimes it's a little earlier. But there's one scene where. So going back to the after credit scenes and Peacemaker, they're more like takeouts. So the scenes that you've already seen before. So they're like an extension of the scene that you already watched. So the one that I remember, there was in one of the shows, he's going over the different helmets that he made for Peacemaker, and he picks up one of the helmets and he says, "This one gives you eczema." And Peacemaker goes, why would I want eczema? And he's like, well, every man's got experience in pain sometimes. Right? So
I gotta watch that.
It's kind of ridiculous. So let's move right along. The explosion of Jack Slater's ex-wife's house was used from The Last Boy Scout from 1991, also written by Shane Black. So nice saving of footage and money, right? So let's just use this. It's just vague enough where it could be anybody's house.
It's always interesting to see that type of stuff where it's like, I've seen that shot before.
Right.
Michael Bay does it a lot. If you watch the Transformers movies, a lot of the explosions, you're like, that's from a different movie of yours. Hold on.
Yeah. The reusing of scenes, the reusing of props or set pieces. So one of my favorite things is that they overuse the set pieces or the props from what's that movie? Starship Troopers. So in Starship Troopers, they have their armor. Their armor's almost famous, right? Especially their helmets. And you see those helmets show up in a bunch of sci-fi movies. Like, oh, that's a Starship Trooper helmet right there. It's like, I know where that's from.
Yeah. So just went to the prop department.
Right. See what else they had. Yeah. So what's the next one?
In one scene, Jack says to Danny regarding his ex-wife, "Do you think I would marry someone so stupid that doesn't know the real voice from a taped one?" In Arnold Schwarzenegger's next movie, True Lies, 1994, he uses a taped voice to fool his wife.
Right.
That answers our earlier question of what was next.
Right. Absolutely. And that was brilliant. So the next piece of trivia, filming involved a 7-day 3 p.m. to 3 a.m. shutdown of Times Square in New York City. Originally, a 75-foot balloon of Arnold Schwarzenegger held 3 sticks of dynamite. After the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, Richard Brick, commissioner of New York City Mayor's Office of Film, Theater, and Broadcasting, and Gary Martin, president of production at Columbia Pictures, agreed to change the prop to a badge. And you can kind of see it at that scene. People are kind of sensitive about bombings at that time. So I think that was the first attack on the World Trade Center, and then before second more famous attack. Yeah,
and then that happened with the second one too. With like Spider-Man, they had to completely change a big scene because there was the trailer release where he caught the helicopter in between the World Trade Center. And that was apparently supposed to be like a scene in the movie. And then obviously 9/11 happened. And they were like, probably should take this out. Just to be like, just for a good taste.
Right. Absolutely did. They totally changed that out. So what's the next thing?
The movie ran so far behind schedule that they had just one test screening, which ran for 2 hours and 20 minutes with a lot of inaudible dialogue, boring the audience. The studio refused to delay the opening so as not to send a message the movie was in trouble, a decision Arnold Schwarzenegger agreed with.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's
how you know you're running tight ship.
Right, that was the wrong decision. If they had given it more time, they could have tightened the movie up because they know that the test screening didn't go well, so they could have tightened the movie up and then release it at a time where they didn't have such stiff competition. Although, to be fair, nobody knew what Jurassic Park was. But it was Steven Spielberg. Why are you going against Steven Spielberg? That was dumb, right?
Steven Spielberg doing another monster movie, and his last one was Jaws.
Right. Come on now.
Expecting?
He's a director of Indiana Jones. He directed Jaws. You know these two movies. You may not know what Jurassic Park is, but you know what he's capable of. He directed E.T., which is one of the most beloved children's stories of all time. Dudes, don't test the Spielberg, right?
You will not win against Spielberg.
Right. Don't do it. Yeah, I mean, let's put it this way. His most failed movies are better than a lot of mediocre movies. Yeah. So don't test the Spielberg. There's one movie in particular that... Go ahead.
His biggest failure movies, West Side Story, that just came out, made like no money that he directed, and that again, it's just bad timing more than anything.
That's bad timing because it's like the people who are going to want to watch West Side Story are people who don't want to go out during the pandemic. So that was not a great decision. But see, that's a question of time. It's not a reflection of how good or bad the film is. I'm thinking about a previous film that he did, but I can't think of it. But it's like, I think it was Peter Pan or something like that. I can't remember, but you're only going to run into a failure every once in a while. Don't take that chance with Steven Spielberg. Don't test him. He's going to out-direct you. So you just go and release your movie at a safer time.
Exactly.
So the last piece of trivia we have is the movie's disappointing box office result has often been contributed to the fact that the fans of Arnold Schwarzenegger did not appreciate their heroes effectively spoofing himself, as well as the action genre that had made him great. However, time apparently seems to have made audiences much kinder to this movie and movies of this type of self-aware humor. Schwarzenegger's next movie, True Lies from 1994, which had more subtle form of self-parody, did much better critically and financially, as did The Expendables from 2010, The Expendables 2 from 2012, and The Expendables 3 from 2014, which I still haven't seen, where Schwarzenegger parodies some of his famous trademarks. In fact, the characters becoming self-aware in their own movies, conventions became a big thing in Scream from 1996 franchise, and Danny's observation that villains often make the mistake of laying out their entire plan in a lengthy monologue was effectively reused in The Incredibles from 2004. You know what was brilliant is the movie that it's actually the comic that turned this on its head, and it was used in the movie, was The Watchmen.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Where Ozymandias, he's explaining his plot to the heroes that found his secret base, and he's telling them like what he planned to do. His plan, obviously, in the comics, but better than how it was portrayed in the movie.
Yeah.
But then he was like, well, now we can, the heroes were like, now we can stop you. It's like, you think I'm going to tell you my plan like I'm some kind of comic book hero? I did that 30 minutes ago.
Yeah, it's already happened.
I'm not telling you what I'm going to do. I'll tell you what I did.
He's like, I was able to outsmart the omnipotent God. Like, I'm not going to fall for that trick.
Right,
like,
right. Absolutely. If
I can trick Dr. Manhattan, what are you saying?
Right, right. Yeah, like you're not, I mean, Dr. Manhattan, he's brilliant, but and at the same time may not be the most smartest being, but he can see into the future. That is his main advantage. And basically, Ozymandias found a way to disrupt his ability to see the future.
Block that. Yeah.
Did you happen to see the Watchmen TV series?
I love that show. It is great.
There were some people I was just talking about it. I can't remember who I was listening to, but they were talking about the slippery guy. They never really explained the guy that slipped and went down the drain. And while they didn't explain it, I don't really need to know who it was. I think what's brilliant is Regina King's reaction when she first saw it and he slipped into the drain, and she's like, "What the fuck?" Right? She was, that was brilliant. So moving on to the next section, we're going to see what the critics thought. The critics, as of this time, they on Rotten Tomatoes, it has 40% professional critical response. The audience gave it 47%, on Rotten Tomatoes. IMDb reviews has it at 6.4 out of 10, which is, not great, middling, but not exactly fresh tomatoes. So
not as harsh as Rotten Tomatoes, though.
Right. But I was supposed to highlight some of these, so you can read some of these if you want to. But I'll start this off. We're gonna, I don't know if I have how I divided these. We'll figure out if these were fresh tomatoes or Rotten Tomatoes as I read them.
Okay.
So Allison Rose from Flick Direct, she wrote, "There are few men who could take in a role of Jack Slater, but Arnold Schwarzenegger embodies the physical and mental acumen of a last action hero."
Definitely.
That's definitely fresh tomatoes. Yeah. It was written for him, so it works out.
Mm-hmm. So and then Nick Rogers from the Film Yap, he said, "Driven less by mammoth ego and more by wild, unchecked id, Last Action Hero works as a riotous comedy and rigorous case study of why we go to the movies. It is an inventive Valentine made timeless by audacious shamelessness and shameless audacity." So that also seems pretty positive.
That is absolutely correct. It is exactly how I feel about this movie. Is why I go to the movies. I just want to go and lose myself. And we talked about that earlier. So moving right along, we have Emmanuel. Right. Emmanuel Levi from EmmanuelLevi.com wrote, "Joyless, tasteless, soulless, Last Action Hero can't decide if it's an actioner, a comedy, or a spoof." How about all three? Can we get them all?
Do you have to decide?
Right. Do we have to decide? I want cherry pie and apple pie. Can't have both? I can have my cake and eat it too, Emmanuel. I think Emmanuel is a Rotten Tomato.
Have your pie and eat it too.
Right. What's the last critic say?
All right. So Scott Weinberg from efilmcritic.com. Yeah, it's bad, but it's not the infernal stink bomb we've labeled it. Heck, Arnold himself has done worse than this. Yeah, that one's a lot less inventive or positive than any of those. But I wouldn't even say it's bad.
Right. He is this one is labeled as negative, but it's kind of a positive negative. It's not so cut and dry. It's not mean or mean-spirited.
Just not the worst thing ever.
Right. It's, or another way of saying it, it's so bad it's good. But I like you said, I don't even think it's bad. I think it's a fun movie. It's a joyous movie to watch. And you've expressed your pleasure at watching Last Action Hero. How was your time here on the Backlit Cinema podcast? Did you enjoy yourself?
Oh, I've had a lot of fun. I've had a great time talking with you. I think we've had some good conversation. I'm sorry if I've spoke over you a couple of times. I think it's the downside of Zoom. I feel like I've cut you off a few times, so I apologize for that. Thank you.
No, that's totally
me. This
fine.
has been fun.
That's great. That was awesome. This is I think this is probably the longest episode we've had, but that's all right. We've done better and worse at the same time.
I ramble and talk a lot.
That's okay. No. I expect this to happen when there's more than just me. I don't even know how to do a short episode sometimes, so it's fine. But finally, The Last Action Hero, as of this recording, is available on Netflix. And next week, we'll be talking about Boomerang with special guest star Julian Morano, brave fighter against the patriarchy before, during, and after Wine O'Clock, and host of It Goes Down in the PM. So one last time, if you like this show, then please help us grow. You can do this by subscribing to the show, rate us, or write a review on Spotify, Spotchaser, and Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcast app. And don't be too shy about sharing our show with someone. Don't forget, you can contact us at fanmail@backlookcinema.com. You can give us your thoughts, make some suggestions, let us know how you feel. And Archie S. Atkinson, you have any final things to plug as we close out the show?
I'll just reiterate, watch or listen to Real Belief. You can't watch podcasts. Usually listen to Real Belief. It's on Spotify, Anchor, iTunes, everywhere podcasts are available, basically. If it's not on your favorite podcast app, let us know on Twitter or something, and we'll figure that out for you. Hopefully you guys give it a listen. Hopefully you guys enjoy it.
Awesome. Archie, you've been a wonderful guest. I've been honored to have you on the show. Thank you so much for coming. And
thank you for having me.
No problem. And when I say that we need you to, rate our podcast, I really would appreciate it if you did that. Believe me, it matters. Be safe. Share a movie with someone in your family. Hug your loved ones and be outstanding.